Welcome to this podcast is making me thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is episode 136. Today's guest has been in over 50 films and TV shows, including Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, The Pretender, 6 Feet Under, Judging Amy, Jag, and of course, she played Jerry and Kramer's girlfriend, Pam, in the season 8 episode of Seinfeld, The Soulmate. Please welcome Kim Myers. Kim, thanks for joining.
You're so welcome. Thank you guys for having me. This is awesome.
I mean, whenever I hear the name Pam, I ultimately think of you, Kim. So obviously, you made an impact. So
that's so funny. I love it.
Take us back. It's crazy. 26 years ago, The Soulmate aired on NBC. I can't believe it's been that long. So tell us a little bit how you were in the business for a while at that point, with the Freddy Krueger movie and everything, about 10 years back. But how'd this role come about? Was there an audition? Would love to hear a little bit about how you solidified the role of the well-known Pam.
I auditioned. I had taken some time off. I just had my first child, and he was about 9 months old. And I told my manager, I said, I'm ready. Let's get back out there. And this was the first audition back. And I was giddy because I too am a huge fan of Seinfeld. So I thought, okay, who knows? So I, bear with me because it's been a few years. I believe I read for the casting director first, and then she called me back with the other women, the other actresses later in the afternoon. And I didn't know who exactly I was going to be reading for and with, but I walked into the room and Jerry Seinfeld was there and the other producers casting. And I read with him, and it was so wonderful and such a surprise and just a lot of fun. And, I feel like they made the decision fairly quickly, and so the process started very quickly. Table read, on its feet, blocking, etc. And yeah, it was so much fun.
Yeah, we heard that a lot. That seems to be a running theme we're hearing, is that it happens quickly with Seinfeld. When you get cast, and you almost go straight into the show, like you're working right away. So that sounds similar. And then so you get there, your first the week on set, right? So it's season 8. So the show is basically at its peak at that point, as far as ratings go and as far as popularity goes. So I'm sure it's, like you said, it's going to be overwhelming and you're just excited. But tell us about, what that vibe is like on set season 8, right? Larry David, we've heard some stories that sometimes he's there. I know he had been gone by then. He left after season 7. He might have been there, maybe not. If not, I know Peter Melman wrote your episode, so I'm sure he was probably there, and Jerry obviously. But just kind of take us through what the vibe is like on set, and kind of seeing how that machine sort of is working at that point.
Yeah, well, and that's an apt description. It definitely felt. Many things. It felt like 100% a well-oiled machine, but there was also an atmosphere, I perceived anyway, of fun, and there was still discovery, and they were still amusing each other, and so those were the things that I noticed. It was so surreal. The first day was all of it was really quite surreal, because I was a big fan myself. Sorry for the dings. And stepping onto the sets for the first time, of course, everything seemed smaller. I felt somewhat familiar with them, but of course I really wasn't. And so being in the atmosphere, in Jerry's apartment, etc., was it was wonderful. It was so much fun. It was just joyful, really. Honestly, I had a good time.
Yeah, and clearly it sounds like you were a fan of the show prior. I mean, what did you ever I know that was your first audition for Seinfeld. Were there any other opportunities in earlier years where you had an opportunity to audition, or this was the first?
This was the first.
Wow. I mean, yeah, and like Tony said, this is season 8. 33 million people watching it at a pop on Thursday night. Just clearly, electrifying stuff. So that must have been amazing. You walk in, Jerry himself is on the audition. I mean,
yeah.
I guess you're a veteran, right?
Oh yeah.
You're a veteran at that point, but it sounds like there were obviously some nerves. But obviously, what do you remember about? I'm just specific to the audition that and Meg Lieberman or whoever, whatever you did, they were like, boom, that's it. Like, this is the girl. Do you remember? What was there a certain scene?
Laughing. It's an energetic experience. You feel it, and I could just. I know for sure what I was feeling. I was hoping I was feeling that they were enthusiastic. But I did. I kind of heard some laughter, and I just saw a perk up a little bit, or felt that, but you never know. I walked out of the room and thought, oh, please, and then you never know.
Yeah, and that energy you're talking about, it's definitely palpable too. Even in your first scene there with Kramer, with Michael Richards, when you kind of you wow him right away, and he's just speechless, and you just have this you have this very welcoming and soft persona that's just you could tell that he's just taken aback and speechless from it. So I guess that's probably what they saw. I'm thinking is just like you said, the energy. But maybe talk about that first scene. With Michael Richards, we've heard so many great stories about him and how he's so welcoming and so professional. But I know that we were talking about before you came on, just kind of prepping, and you really stole, even though he's in that scene, you stole that scene. Just from your kind of owning the apartment, and then Jerry comes in, and you pretty much have them both wrapped around your finger. It's a really great scene. Maybe take us through how that happened for you.
If only. Yeah, it was. Well, speaking about Michael Richards, everything you just mentioned, I felt and I saw, and I had so much respect for him. There was also a very, very clear level of seriousness, because I think being able to create a character like that and have yes, it's funny and there's a lot of physical humor, but to believe Kramer is who he is, I saw a lot of serious thought, and obviously, years and years of experience and preparation. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of feeling welcomed, I felt very welcomed by everybody. It was really, thank goodness, right? Maybe that would have been a big letdown if you didn't feel that way.
Yeah, listen, we've spoken now with over 100 guests, and none of them have a bad thing. To your point, the welcoming is just they've been on other shows and it wasn't that way. So for a number one show to be that way, it's incredible. And especially Jerry with his name on the title, for him to kind of step back and let others shine, it's remarkable.
Yeah, and I felt a lot of the comment you just made. I remember in particular one moment we were, what was this? I think it was the scene in the bookstore when I was at Pam's up at the register, and the deal with the scrunchie, and we did rehearsed it. We did a couple of takes, and we stepped off the set briefly, and Jason Alexander was just I could feel his kindness. It was just very supportive and very yes, wonderful and nice,
Yeah, that's a real funny scene and kind of an interesting scene with Jerry, because he's on the defensive, not a defensive, but he's like, I really like what's going on with this. Jerry usually doesn't have to do with his girlfriends. If he loses a girlfriend, he doesn't care. but now there's a little competition.
Right.
And we rarely see that with Jerry, and you kind of snub him, if you will. It just literally just turned your back. I always wondered how that scene actually ended. Like, how did he really leave? Like, and they just cut. But and that's another beauty of the show. Just they always kind of leave you wanting more. But what do you like to that point? Like, I'm just little Seinfeld history. Like, you said you were a fan of the show. Like, what are some of your favorite episodes? I'm just curious back over the years. Come on, you give us like three great ones.
That's just awful of you to ask that. There are so many.
Obviously yours. We know yours.
Okay, there's one, but that's, obviously there's a little bias there. There are the obvious ones, and it's obvious because they got so much attention. Soup Nazi, of course, but then what's it called? The Kicks, something little
Kicks, Elaine dancing, classic,
hilarious. She was so sweet as well. I didn't work with her, we didn't have any scenes together, but she was floating in and out and doing, obviously doing her own work, and she was very just lovely. Oh man.
We'll let you off the hook. But you mentioned Julia, and you mentioned Jason as well. So you weren't in scenes with either of them, but
I was in scenes with Jason.
But Julia, at the end.
Oh yeah, right.
But not as. Yeah.
But their presence was still on the set, like you said, and they were kind of popping in and out. And so were you there just for your scenes? What do you remember? Did you kind of sit in the stands and watch kind of all the scenes the whole week as it unraveled?
No, I don't. But I don't remember that. I don't remember being there the whole time and seeing all the other scenes shot. Hang on. Of course I did, because when we taped, we would have taped the whole show. So yeah, that's right. I'm not remembering exactly where I was.
That makes sense.
It might have been like right in front of the audience or in the back.
Yeah, I mean the scene when Newman is feeding Kramer the lines, and so I was curious about that scene because it could have went two ways in my mind as far as how it was shot. Like, was Newman really right there, right behind Kramer, and you were right there that entire time, or were they cutting and just kind of shooting Newman talking, and then later on doing you and Kramer? But it was like really him feeding Kramer the lines in real time,
unless
right?
I'm really off base, which is possible.
Yeah. No, that must have been kind of funny to watch.
I remember him being there. Yeah,
watch them work together like that. Him feeding the lines, and then them coming to you, and Wayne Knight had a big part in that whole episode. Actually, I'm wondering, what that was like. If you had any interaction with him, or just that scene in general, it just was so much fun with Kramer, kind of having his muse behind him, who's Newman, and. It's like that's who you really were attracted to in the long run, really. If you think about it, it was Newman, and not Jerry or Kramer, right?
That's right. There's the catch. That's so funny.
Yeah, Wayne Knight. It's funny. We think of him as just part of the fabric of the show, but he was only in about 40 episodes. But this was obviously one of his biggest, clearly, and the chemistry between him and Michael were great. And I don't remember what you were doing. You're kind of just like organizing books, I
was.
You're doing your book thing, right?
I was doing the thing. I was taking inventory.
Pantene.
Pantene was the shampoo. That was a big shampoo in the 90s.
That was the big mail, but there really is no junk mail.
Yeah.
And you had that that. I remember you the wardrobe was kind of like a big sweater,
and it
type
was
thing.
Hot. Say that again?
Yeah, no, it looked like it was really warm on you and everything.
Very warm. Yeah, it was quite warm. New York, AC, in the bookstore, I guess. Speaking
of wardrobe and everything else, I mean, we got to hear your thoughts. Scrunchy or no scrunchy at the time, not now. Now I think. Wondering at the time, that was the whole thing. Kramer and Jerry kind of argued over, do you like the scrunchie? You don't like the scrunchie? What was your personal preference at the time? Do you recall how you
at the time? Oh, between the two?
Yeah. Were you
or
a
scrunchie or
scrunchie?
no scrunchie?
Yeah. Were you wearing a scrunchie at the time often? Is that your preference, or were you more hair down like
I
it is
think
now?
more hair down. Although scrunchies were very in at that time. But I think, yeah, hair down.
And listen, for those listening on audio, Kim has not aged one bit in 26 years, folks. So just to let you know. So yeah, tell us a little bit about. I mean, so it was season 8. You've been on some other shows. Like, did you feel? Did you get the sense this was a? I know you were a fan of the show, but once you get on set, was this just run differently than other things you've been a part of? Did you get that sense, or was it it wasn't your typical sitcom, if you will, right? I mean,
right. And actually, I have to say, I had not done any sitcom before, so I had nothing to compare it to specific to sitcoms. But just as work in television or for that production, it was just obvious that it ran. It didn't obviously entirely run itself. People worked very hard and prepared and all that, of course, but it had that element of, let's move it along. Everything was just in sync from my perspective. That's how I felt.
Yeah, and at that time, so it was season 8. Tony mentioned earlier, Larry David left the year before, so there were the whispers that this could be the last year, and then obviously they went on and inked like a bigger deal for a final year, but they didn't do that yet at the time. Did you get the sense like this was kind of the end of the road, or would you could tell these guys kind of wanted more?
Honestly, I didn't get a sense. I didn't pick up either way.
It's interesting though. You mentioned the vibe and the kind of the well-oiled machine, if you will, and that sort of thing. And Peter Melman wrote this episode. We've had him on the podcast a couple of times actually, and he was there from early on, right? So he was one of the ones that kind of carried through. I mean, Larry Charles left, after season 4, and then eventually Larry David left. So Melman's still there in season 8, and he kind of has. We like look at the old realm there, and he wrote this episode. So we'd be remiss if we didn't kind of ask, what kind of insights there did he give you around the, I know Ackerman probably is directing, but I'm sure Melman might have been there as a producer and a writer as well. Did you have any interaction with him as far as like the character, or was there any kind of interactions there?
I don't recall that. I recall all the direction coming from Andy Ackerman. Yeah, and I could be completely wrong about that. So forgive me, Peter Melman, if I'm forgetting. Yeah, no, it was primarily the director.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the shift that happened when Larry David left, because he was kind of the floor general, if you will. But obviously Jerry had a lot of access to what was going on as well. I'm trying to think. Actually, we always talk about the rap parties. Did you got invited to the rap party for season 8? No. Don't tell me no, Kim. No.
Wait a minute. What? No, you had to have got invited.
I wasn't. I don't think I was.
Oh, those bastards.
I was you know what? In fairness, I was probably still pretty sleep deprived. No. I'm
sorry, you said it was your first child?
Was not even
your first child?
My first child.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
He's now 26.
Well, 26, yeah.
What?
Seinfeld fan?
Is he a Seinfeld? I'm sure he's a Seinfeld. My younger son is 23. Is a huge Seinfeld
there we go.
Curb fan.
Nice.
As am I.
So yeah, what do they think of your appearance as Pam? I'm sure they get a huge.
Well, my son, who's the fan, Liam, gets the biggest kick out of it, and his best friends are huge Seinfeld, Curb Your Enthusiasm fans. So they think it's just so silly, ridiculous, amazing.
I mean, it's gotta. it's got to feel great that the show wasn't on that long, and Jerry did have a lot of girlfriends, but you were the one who kind of dated both, which I don't know. I don't think that ever happened between. Kramer kind of moved in on a lot of.
Kramer made his moves a couple of times, but never really full on like he did here with Pam. I mean, that was when he says your name 3 times. That must have been a kick on set. I mean, I would imagine that was a funny scene where he's a Pam, Pam, Pam. The bacon, the bacon. That's a great line as well. It's definitely, the whole George stuff too. I know, it was kind of a whole separate storyline, but it was a big storyline with the briefcase and everything like that. There was a lot going on in that episode, as most of those later seasons, they kind of packed in a lot. So I'm sure it was a lot going on there, and it must have been. I'm guessing at the time for you, especially you said it was your first sitcom and your first time back, it must have been kind of a whirlwind. So, I'm glad you're able to
completely
remember some of it to tell us. So some great stories. So,
must have been it was a whirlwind. It was such a fun whirlwind. And at the time, I didn't live too far from the soundstage, the studios where they shot. So it was just, wow, this is great too. I get to, 5-10 minutes. So,
and you're an LA girl, right? You born and grew up there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm always curious how you got in the business, right? I know Freddy Krueger was one of your first, if not first, things you did, right, in the business, which was amazing. We love those movies, but how'd you get into it? How'd you know acting was the path?
In elementary school, I was in 6th grade. At that time, that was your last year of elementary school, and we did a 6th grade musical every year. That school did that, and I didn't want to audition. I was very shy around big groups of people, but we had to. All of us had to, and I got cast in the lead in Oliver Twist. And I fell in love with it. I had the best time. And it didn't feel shy on stage. And that felt really good. And then I studied it in high school. And I did, senior year of high school, I got cast in a USC grad film. And it was screened, and industry people came to the screening. And through that, I got my agent. And then I was going off to college. But that got the ball rolling. And then I got Elm Street the summer between my freshman and sophomore year.
And I have to imagine, illustrious career. I mean, you should be so proud. And we always think, we're Seinfeld fans. We think you're most recognized for Seinfeld, but where does Seinfeld rank in where people recognize you? I know Freddy Krueger's probably right up there, but
that's right up there. That has carried on. It has a life of its own. That the whole, what would you call it? Not genre.
Franchise, maybe?
Franchise. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It's unbelievable. I had no idea. So that's a big one. Pretender. The Pretender. God. I mean, other things here and there, I'm sure, that I'm not thinking of right now.
A Pretender, yeah. John Grease, another Seinfeld alum.
Okay.
If you didn't know that. There's always
connections. We always like to find the connections. Yeah, we always like to find the connections. There's always something. Well, 6 Feet Under too. You're an episode of, right? And that had Krause, who was in Seinfeld episode The Limo, one of our favorites.
Oh, yes.
And Andrea Parker, who was in The Pretenders, was the nurse in the contest.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
She has a little quick line. But a lot of connections. obviously, as you go deep in your career, it's unbelievable. But
Absolutely.
Kim, this has been great. I mean, I can't thank you enough. I mean, like I said, when I hear Pam, I think of you. And again, what a performance! And your career has been great. What are you up to now? Anything you want to share?
Yes, I'm happy to say. I haven't. I took a bit of time off. We're still raising my youngest, who's my daughter. She's 16. But I did a film that is coming out towards the end of this year with Anna Camp, who is wonderful. The title is in flux right now, so I unfortunately can't give a title. But that's coming out towards the end of this year, and it's a family story, family drama based on an actual family that deals with mental illness and drug abuse and homelessness, and not a lighthearted story, but a very important story and a very timely story, I think.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds great. We're definitely looking forward to that. That's awesome. It's really good to hear. And thank you so much. This has been great. So much fun.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. I appreciate it. I was so excited when my manager said, "Hey, are you interested?" I said, "Yeah."
The Soulmate.
The Soulmate.
Bam,
love
bam,
you.
Bam.
Thanks so much, Kim. You're the best.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thanks.
Bye. Goodbye from the show.